When you get to a small business where you have to wear all the hats, you have to be a really agile learner. Milo's is a 79-year-old startup. Next year, we'll be celebrating 80 years in business. Trisha just announced that we're going to hit $1 billion in retail sales by 2027.
On this episode of Executive Edge, Greg is joined by Chris Droney, COO of Milo's Tea Company, leadership advisor, and organizational culture expert.
Tell us about the growth.
We've gone from one facility to 4 facilities in the last 5 years. We run 363 days a year. So we take 2 days down. We take Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day. And even when we do that, it's tough. It's not what our competitors do, but it's the right thing to do for quality and for taste.
Hey, hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of the Executive Edge podcast. I'm excited today to have with us Chris Droney. Chris is the COO of Milo's Tea Company. He's been there since 2023. Chris's responsibilities at Milo's include heading up strategic growth, operational excellence, information technology, and cross-functional execution across the company's 4 manufacturing locations. Chris brings nearly 20 years of operations and supply chain experience to Milo's, following previous stints at a number of other CPG companies, as well as some time with private equity. Chris is a Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania native, which I'm excited about. And he graduated from Carnegie Mellon University, and he now resides in Birmingham, Alabama, where Milo's is headquartered. Chris, it's great to have you here today, and I'm telling you, it's great for 3 reasons. First reason is, 1, I love the product. I love Milo's tea.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah. You're welcome on the regular. Second reason I'm excited is I love growth stories, and Milo's has a fantastic growth story that we're going to talk about today. Yeah. And the third reason is because you are a Pittsburgh native, and I've kind of adopted Pittsburgh as my home. I grew up in Pennsylvania, but not in the city, but I've lived here long enough to adopt it as my home and become a massive Steeler fan. I know, and I could not miss out on the fact that you now live in Birmingham. Pittsburgh's the steel capital of the North, if you will.
That's right.
And Birmingham is the steel capital of the South. So there's some good tie-in there for us as 2 guys who are Steeler fans and know all about steelmaking, I guess.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, Greg. It's an exciting time of the year. We're filming this right as training camp is wrapping up and the regular season is upon us. And whether or not the Steelers have a great season ahead of us, at least it's been an exciting offseason. So if you don't have things to talk about with Aaron Rodgers and other happenings, you're missing out at this point, right? So
yeah, everybody's getting excited now. I love the defense. The offense, especially the O-line, that's the biggest question, I think. Can they protect who's over back there?
Exactly. So we can talk Steelers the whole time, but I think you want to talk business here a little more.
Yeah, I think our audience would maybe not all of them are Steeler fans, the less enlightened ones maybe, but let's give the audience what they're looking for today. That's what this podcast is all about here, really helping people develop an edge. And you've got a great story. So if you could quickly maybe take us through your professional journey leading up to when you landed at Milo's, explaining kind of what kind of roles you've had, what kind of companies you've worked for, and the kind of situations that you gravitate toward as you move through your career.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you kind of mentioned in the intro, roughly 20 years, almost exclusively in the CPG industry. And I'd love to say I had a plan or, had kind of charted exactly what I wanted to do. But, the practical reality is I was an intern at Heinz in between my junior and senior years of college. And really enjoyed the experience, tried very hard to add value and learn and things of that nature. And that turned into full-time employment. So I spent about 7 years with Heinz, site-based. So worked for the Ore-Ida business and based out of Boise, Idaho area. Back at corporate, worked in sourcing roles, supply chain PMO roles, really the gamut across the supply chain, and was super appreciative of that opportunity because Heinz was absolutely one of the best companies you could work for. Right, so many different business units, consumer product side, food service side, domestic, international. So you got exposed to a lot and a lot of great leaders. And so really enjoyed that time. But as you know, being in the Pittsburgh area, things changed in 2013. 3G Capital bought the business. It transformed, in different ways. Some that were positive, some that were maybe a little different than what we had hoped or expected. So I left in 2014 and went to Keurig Green Mountain, and that was a great opportunity because it allowed me to take some of those really great best practices and training that I had at Heinz and apply to a company that was large, but because it was growing at such a pace, it was doubling every few years at Keurig at that time because the explosive K-Cup growth at that moment. It really was behind in terms of process capabilities, things of that nature. So we got to go and really help professionalize a larger business and help it continue to grow. Similarly, JAB came in and bought Keurig Green Mountain after about 3 years there. So stayed on for a period of time. And then at that point, my wife and I had our first child. We lived in northern Vermont, which, people in Alabama think Pittsburgh's cold. Northern Vermont is a whole nother level of cold. And so we had a newborn, and we kind of were looking around saying, what do we want to do? And I took my corporate sabbatical. So we moved back to Pittsburgh, and I helped my family, my parents, through a growth and exit plan on non-food office furniture and interiors business. So like total different segue. But reason I bring that up is I think it really prepared me for the career I've had since that point. I thought I knew a lot about business. I thought, you're young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. You think, okay, I worked at Heinz, I worked at Keurig, dynamic environments, and all true. But when you get to a small business where you have to wear all the hats, you have to be a really agile learner and leader. That stretched me to the max, but it was a great experience. We were able to sell the business and run through a successful growth and exit plan in about 16, 18 months. At that point, went into a private equity portco operating position, and great experience. Again, wouldn't have been prepared for it if I'd come straight from corporate into that role. And then from that, had an opportunity to go work for Mars Corp on their high growth food businesses. Awesome experience. Mars has a fantastic culture. It's a privately held business, but large, about 50 billion in top line, and really wasn't looking for anything, but had an opportunity with Milo's, and I had an opportunity to speak to our CEO and third generation owner, Tricia Wallwork, and I think we're going to get into a little bit more detail about that and how we operate and what the rhythm looks like here and the pace. But the opportunity to come here and build something people-wise, capability-wise, business-wise in a truly high-growth, privately held, family-held environment was just something I couldn't pass up. So that's how I ended up in Alabama a few years ago. It's been a big change for our family, but at the same time, it's been a phenomenal opportunity and a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's such a cool story at Milo's, and I don't know that a lot of people know this story, but Milo's has been in business for about 80 years, right? As you mentioned, the current CEO, Tricia Wallwork, is a third generation family, CEO of the business. Right. And give us a little bit of that history. Like, where did Milo's start? How did it come to be such a juggernaut? And then tell us about the growth, because I think our audience needs to know the kind of growth you've gone through in the last 5 to 6 years or so.
Absolutely. And you know what, if you're viewing this and you're not necessarily in the Southeast, you might not have as much name recognition with Milo's yet. But I guarantee you that will continue to change over the coming years. And frankly, I didn't have an appreciation for the brand and the size of the scale and the growth that the brand had until I really had an opportunity to speak with Tricia. But long and the short of it, Milo's, we like to say, is a 79-year-old startup. So next year, we'll be celebrating 80 years in business. As mentioned, we're third generation right now. And really, each generation had its own business model. So the first generation, Milo and B. Carlton, so husband and wife. So Milo is a real person, not some fictitious brand that was created out of thin air, right? It's based on a real
Right.
person with a real story. He opened a hamburger stand in Birmingham, Alabama, after returning home from World War II, where he served, married his sweetheart B. They start a restaurant, right? Hamburger stand. Was wildly successful and well known in the Birmingham area. Second gen, Milo and B's son Ronnie and his wife Sheila come in. They take that format and they franchise it, and the franchise became very, very successful in the Southeast from the 70s, 80s into the 90s. Ronnie and Sheila decide to sell the franchise in 2002. And at that point, this is really interesting, but they had also stood up a kind of small, fledgling retail tea business. And it was not something they really focused on at the time, but because consumers loved the tea in the restaurant, they said, why don't we package it and sell it at the store? So Southeastern grocers, Piggly Wiggly, regional chains, like much like you have Giant Eagle in Western Pennsylvania, started selling the product, and the buyer of the restaurant franchise didn't know what to do with the retail tea business. So basically said, hey, keep that. I want the restaurants, and you all can do with the tea business what you choose. So Ronnie and Sheila, and then Tricia, who joined the business in 2004 and became CEO in 2012, really focused on this. They built a small plant in Bessemer, Alabama, and they started making their own tea. And one thing led to another, but really when Tricia took the helm in 2012, she started to figure out how to market beyond just regional chains and get into Walmart, Dollar General, Kroger, really some amazing, obviously first-class retailers, not just size and scale, but reputation. And the growth has been phenomenal. And during COVID, the business just absolutely took off. And we pride ourselves on providing not only delicious beverages that have zero preservatives, so everything we make is 100% cold chain for my supply chain folks out there. From the moment we brew it to the moment it's consumed, it has to be held in a cold environment. That's not easy to do. It's not what our competitors do, but it's the right thing to do for quality and for taste. And we had a position during COVID where some of our competitors decide not to prioritize service, not to prioritize the customer or the consumer experience. And, being a family-held business, we don't necessarily look at the dollars and cents of service and in a very discrete, momentary manner. We think of it long-term as an investment. So that just led to one thing after another. And since 5 years ago, Greg, we went from, a couple $100 million in revenue. We did, we will do roughly 800 plus million this year in retail sales. And Tricia just announced this week, actually on Bloomberg, that we're going to hit $1 billion in retail sales by 2027. So we went from pretty humble beginnings. Yes, an nearly 80-year-old company, but in our current form of a retail tea and lemonade and beverage business, about 20 years. And the hyper growth has been over the last 5 or 6. So with that comes scaling people, facilities. We've gone from 1 to 4 facilities in just a few years, 100 associates to 1,000 associates. So a lot of growth, a lot of change, a lot of challenges, but also a lot of fun.
Wow. That's a lot to consume there. So it sounds like your obsession with the customer and your obsession with quality really helped you to jump ahead of the competition. I know when I walk into a retailer, I walked into one yesterday to pick this up, and I said, wow, there's more than one choice there in the iced tea area, right? The
Yes.
house brand, right? Milo's, some other competitive brands. But for me, the quality, the fact that it's all natural ingredients, right? It's important to me. And then just the quality of the product is so good. It tastes great. And, I think when we talked before, you said that your on time and full metrics are really great. And I'm sure your B2B customer, the retailer that's receiving that and bringing it in is looks at you differently with the high OTIF type performance. Is that true?
Very true. Yeah. So, we like to say we are all in sales, right? So no matter what your role is in the business, you're supporting sales. And it's, I think growing up in a family business, Greg, I always felt that way. My father was in biz dev. My mother ran more of our strategic accounts, long-term relationships. So they were always selling, right? You have to sell. And I try to impress with the operations team. We're a service organization to our customers and our consumers, but also our sales team, right? Which it's kind of funny. There's often some conflict and there can be some acrimony between, supply and demand sides of the house. It's natural tension, right? You're not making enough, you're making too much, it's not the right stuff, whatever it might be. But we really embrace that we're here to serve the customer and the consumer. And by doing that, you have to put your growth team, as we call it, our sales and marketing commercial team, in a position to be successful. And to do that and to win when you get to the line review or that sales meeting, you have to do a couple things really, really well. You have to service the heck out of the business, right? You have to always have consistent quality in food safety. And then for us internally, it's also people safety, right? That's our foundational pieces. So that people safety, quality and food safety, and customer service are foundational to how we do business, particularly within the ops side. And then you start to look at, when you do that well, you're able to look at efficiency. So how can you generate cost efficiencies that you can push back and dump back into the business as a rocket fuel, right? That's your investment for growth. You look at how you steward capital and your cash investments, and then you look at innovation and what can we do there. So how do we partner with vendors, different suppliers, technology folks to make sure that we're their first call when there's an opportunity for new flavors, new technology, new solutions, new route to markets, whatever it might be. So, on one hand, we're very fundamental and foundational and kind of elementary on how we approach things and do that really, really well. But once that becomes part of your day-to-day operating model and your cadence, it really allows you to focus on, fuel for growth, cash stewardship, and then innovation. And so that's kind of our simple playbook. It's a pyramid at the end of the day. It's not groundbreaking, but the discipline to do it well and to think enterprise wide is different as opposed to just thinking of it from a functional perspective.
Now, I love the simplicity because I think we have a tendency as humans to overcomplicate things.
Absolutely.
But the other part you emphasized was the execution and the discipline to run the business in a certain way. And I think you get some degrees of freedom being a private company that you should take advantage of, right? Right. Let's make that an advantage for us, not a disadvantage. So that's awesome. You've got 4 plants now. I think 2 of those are fairly new, right? You had the 2 plants in Birmingham and Bessemer, which are kind of right near each other in Alabama. Tell us about the other plants and the operations too, because I think it's interesting the way you all operate your shift schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as mentioned, we've gone from 1 facility to 4 facilities in the last 5 years. So, Bessemer, Alabama was the original facility that the family, it was a greenfield in 2003 that they stood up post the sale of the restaurant business. And when they doubled down on figuring it out, which just by the way is like so cool, right? To think of the story of, a buyer not wanting the tea business, and the tea business dwarfs, the restaurant business today, but also of just the entrepreneurialism and the risk taking that the family was willing to do. Right. So it's really kind of interesting. That's where I sit today to think about the history there. But, in 2018, 2019, Milo saw that business was expanding not only from a total capacity standpoint, but a geographical footprint that we needed something further west. So in 2020, Greenfield site in Tulsa, Oklahoma was opened. Came back about 1.5 years, 2 years later, needed more capacity just due to just unbelievable growth. And we did a brownfield conversion of an existing dairy facility in the Birmingham area. And then just opened our 4th and our largest facility in Spartanburg, South Carolina. So upstate South Carolina, $200+ million investment. We'll have more than 200 associates when fully scaled. Phenomenal facility that lets us service really all of the Eastern Seaboard. So we've continued to grow and grow and grow and evolve. We run 24 because it's a fresh product, right? Our product has generally less than 40 days of shelf life on average. When the customer requires 20 to 25, it means we have roughly, let's say 10 days, maybe 12 to 15 days on best to get product all across the country, all 50 states. So Alaska, Hawaii is included in that. So you really have a kind of a make to order, fresh supply chain. There's not really inventory you can rely on. So reliability of your operating systems and your lines and your people are absolutely critical. And then that also leads to an operating schedule of 24/7, and we run 363 days a year. So we take 2 days down. We take Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day. And even when we do that, Greg, it's tough. And I know for many who maybe aren't from a warm weather climate or from the Southeast, you would think, okay, well, you probably don't sell much tea and lemonade in the wintertime, but we sell a ton of it. And my first year in Alabama, neighbors invite us over for Thanksgiving. And it wasn't just because I work at Milo's, but they had sweet tea, Milo sweet tea on the Thanksgiving table. And they said, this is our tradition. It has been in our family for a long, long time. So it's a busy time of year for us all the time. And we're really, really fortunate, feel really just blessed that, the brand has exploded in the way that it has. And the family has fueled the growth as well, right? I mean, it's big bets, betting on the team, but that comes from confidence in the team. And to your earlier point, it comes in great execution, right? You have to show up every day. We are far from perfect and we have a ton of opportunities operationally, but we have a true continuous improvement mindset. So I'll be darned if we don't get at least 1% better each and every day.
That's great. Yeah, let me dig into the mind of a chief operating officer for a minute, because I know that you use an approach called systems thinking, right?
Absolutely.
And I'd like you to talk to our audience about that.
Sure.
As you look into this type of growth and scale is sort of very challenging typically, especially with a cold product like you have. So tell us how you and your team apply systems thinking to make that successful.
Sure. So, and I have to give credit to our chief legal officer. She heard me talking about this, I think, early after I joined, and she said, Chris, that's a system with a capital S. So we call it a system with a capital S, but what it really means is it's people, process, tools, and technology. And I always say with my team, in that order, meaning you can't put process before people. You can't put tools and tech before anything else. It's about right people in the right seats. It's about the right fit for purpose process, right? So making sure that it's not bureaucratic, it's not overly governed, it doesn't slow us down. It allows us to be agile, but it's the right level of process. And then it's adding on the tools and tech stack to be superchargers to what you do and enablers of better success. But I'll give you an example. So, one of the opportunities when I joined, Greg, was really around how we plan the business. So you can imagine when you're in a different category in the grocery store and you might be in the center store, a shelf-stable product. How do you deal with busy season? Well, you build inventory, right? So you've got 4 or 6 or 8 weeks of inventory, and you kind of are able to level out your production over the course of a year. Here we have this huge spike starting with Memorial Day through Labor Day, right? And you can't go into the season building more inventory. So you have to get really, really creative. But as you kind of step back and zoom out from that, the realization is we need a real deal planning capability, right? So we spent a lot of time talking about what does that capability look like based upon the business result we want, right? We want great service, whether it's January or whether it's July. So what's required as part of that? Who are the people that have that type of capability internally, or do we need to supplement with some people externally? So as we started to stand up a planning function, truly a new function for us, it started all with the people. You then think about process, and for those in operations, supply chain, right? We all know S&OP, IBP, pick your flavor. But for us, we started even more granular. It was like, what is the daily work? What is the sales and operation execution, the S&OE that we need each and every day, so that you can start talking about a bigger S&OP, and then ultimately, how we plan the business end to end with an IBP type approach or solution. So it was all about getting the right fit for purpose process in there, not coming in and saying, hey, it has to be a 5-step world-class IBP. No. Are we just connecting the dots between what we said we're going to produce today, daily attainment, and therefore what the service impact is going to be, positive or negative, and how do we communicate that with the growth team, our sales team? And then from there, we start looking at the tools and tech. Okay, well, what do we have? Well, we're planning in spreadsheet. Is that going to work forever? No. Do we have the right ERP solution? Yes or no? Do we have the right planning capabilities, the right TMS, the right WMS? All of those things, but it never came before the people in the process. So it's really stacking those on top of each other, as opposed to just pulling the technology off the wall and saying off the shelf, and that is going to get us to the promised land. And I think for other organizations who are more mature, they may not have to go through that evolution, but for us, we had to, because we had grown so quickly, and you really just have to go back down to foundational blocking, tackling, execution in order to then throw, the flea flicker, right? Or the trick play. You have to be really good at just running your standard playbook. So that's what we focused on a lot, but that system thinking is what I come back to. So I often get requests for, can we go invest in XYZ technology? And I come back to, who's running it? What type of outcome do you want to get? What's the business result? And really grounding ourselves then on the governance of, how are you going to run this? How does it work into our operating model day to day, before we say, let's just go buy the tech? And with AI and things going on, that's the temptation, right? It feels like there's a lot of quick solves. And while it has a ton of capability and potential, the execution of it is a lot more nuanced.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot of gold there. Thank you for sharing a real deep look into the way you think about, I love it, with a capital S, systems thinking. Fantastic. So you're in Birmingham, Alabama, and that isn't like the hot spot that I think a lot of people graduating from college or in their career want to go rushing to. Nothing wrong with Birmingham, but it's just, how do you attract and retain great talent? Because your systems thinking starts first with people.
Yes.
So I'm interested to hear, being in a location like you are, where the company's headquartered, how do you attract great people?
All right, so this is going to sound totally self-serving, Greg, and like I got a chip on my shoulder growing up in Pittsburgh, which maybe I do a little bit, but just like Pittsburgh has a little bit of a stigma if you're not familiar with it and haven't been there, Birmingham sometimes can have the same too. What I can tell you is quality of life and just overall amenities of the region. The people are phenomenal, and I will cite it, and we'll have to drop it in a LinkedIn post. There is a Wall Street Journal article that was just published about like the 5 best markets for new graduates, and Birmingham made the list. That all being said, you're right. It is not Chicago. It is not LA. It is not New York. It is not Atlanta, which you would typically think of your CPG strongholds, right? So the market is just smaller. Therefore, the labor market and talent market is somewhat smaller. That being said, I think Milo's made a very strategic decision during COVID to commit to having a virtual and remote workforce. So what we have done specific to the operations team is we had a lot of phenomenal internal talent that we have tried to put in the right roles, give the right training, and scale up, but also acknowledging that the business is changing and our performance needs to change in a way that we had to supplement with outside hires as well. So we've gone and we've recruited in those markets that are close to Birmingham and started there. So Nashville's only a few hours away. Atlanta's only a couple hours away. Dallas. And we've gone and we've hired some of the best and brightest. So Coca-Cola, Keurig, Ocean Spray. Our leadership team comes from the best of the best. In operations, you're used to traveling. It's just part of the job, right? You're out in the sites, you're working with our frontline associates. So we've been able to find this right kind of hybrid approach that's been really critical for us. So we've committed, Milo's has committed to that as a business to maintaining, remote workforce with ops. It's never going to be fully remote. You're on site, but if you're close to where we are, we're definitely willing to talk and wanting the best and most capable leaders.
That's great. That's great. And I think also that a growth story, and I think the culture at Milo's must be attractive to people that come on board.
Yeah, it is. So, call me a skeptic, right? But when I heard about people first, so we champion a people first culture, and I've yet to come across a company, Greg, that doesn't say they're people first. It's probably not good for business, to say to the contrary. But that being said, you kind of wait for the shoe to drop, and you think, okay, well, yeah, they say they're people first, but wait for the first tough decision, people decision, whatever it might be, right? And we'll see if this really if this really hangs, and it does hang, and I think the reason it hangs here and it doesn't at other companies is not because of intent. I think many companies have the right intent to be people first, to do the right thing, to have a great, strong culture, to live their values. So take what's on the wall and actually do it each and every day. But I think few have the flexibility and have the structure to do it. And we're not just privately held, but we're family held. And we're not just family held, but we're a generational business. And we're not just a generational business that says that, but we're led by a CEO goes and posts that and puts it on LinkedIn, like, when Poppy was acquired, of like, we're happy for them, and that's a great story. But at the same time, Milo's could be one of those headlines, tomorrow if the family wanted it to be, but it's not what they want it to be. They want to be generational because they know with that, that allows us to live our values sincerely and honestly and transparently each and every day. So I think that's the difference. And if you're in a publicly held company, the challenges, right? You want to do the right thing, but you have quarterly earnings. Things change, priorities change. Our time horizon is just different. We're not thinking about tomorrow or a year from now or 3 years from now. We're thinking about Gen 4, Gen 5. And when you frame things that way, it leads you not only to make decisions differently and consider investments differently, but also, I think, to behave differently. And that's kind of, we talk about values, beliefs, behaviors. Like, you can have great values in your heart, you can believe in your mind, but do you behave it each and every day? And that going from beliefs to behaviors is probably the hardest jump. And I think it's not only our intent and what we stand for, but it's also structurally, it allows us to do that.
Yeah, I think it's another advantage of yours of being private and being family owned private, not private equity owned private. That's quite different.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of the same metrics that apply to public companies may apply there. But it gives you the ability to really put the people first and make different decisions than maybe a public company could when things change in the business. So I think, again, you're leveraging the fact that it's a family-owned private company to make that an advantage, and that's great. So you touched on this a little bit. I want to look into the future because this train is not stopping; it's going, right. You mentioned the goal to be at $1 billion by 2027. I saw the posting by your CEO, and she said when Poppy was acquired, that was acquired by PepsiCo. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. She mentioned right out there in the public, right on LinkedIn, we're going to remain independent. We're a generational business. We are built to last. We are not built to sell. And so I'm interested to know what that means for the future of Milo's. Some of your growth, we haven't touched on this much, but before people come away from this podcast thinking you only make tea, you make more than tea. You make lemonade, you make tea and lemonade mixed, you make different sweetness levels. This is the
Sure.
extra sweet tea. It
Yes.
matches my shirt rather well, so I chose that one. But you've expanded your product line, staying within beverages, very adjacent, I would say, kind of tuck in things. But what's it mean in terms of growth? Where's that
Sure.
growth going to come from? We know you want to go after 1 billion. We'll call that the goal for now. How do you get there? Tell us about what you can about
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
plans to grow. I don't want to have you disclose
No, no.
anything that's going to get you in hot water.
No, you know what? So I appreciate that, Greg. That's a good policy. But look, the here's what I think is most exciting about the $1 billion in 2027 is that that's just execution of our current playbook, truly, right? So we are the number one selling refrigerated tea in the U.S. 45% of refrigerated tea that's consumed in the U.S. is Milo's. Okay, so like
Whoa.
that's a crazy stat that I was again totally naive to, and it was pure ignorance prior to joining Milo's. I had no clue how large the company was in tea. We have the fastest selling lemonade in refrigerated set as well, and we launched 2 new products this year: a strawberry and raspberry lemonades, and they have been far exceeding expectations. When you launch these things, you just want them to stick and be tried, hopefully at a minimum, they're a good seasonal product. Well, these look like they're going to be, year round offerings for us. We're very, very bullish on them. So when you look at it, the $1 billion is within reach of just doing the right thing each day, sticking to our playbook, not getting distracted, keeping our eye on the ball, and doing everything we mentioned about fresh, delicious, high quality products on time and in full, all the operational stuff. That all being said, we're also a generational business, so we are thinking beyond just what we produce today. And we only really sell into the retail area. We don't do food service today. Unlike many brands that will build their product through a smaller single serve format in C-store, convenience channel, things of that nature. We're underpenetrated there. So Western Pennsylvania Sheetz, Eastern Pennsylvania Wawa, we're in both retailers now, but we're just starting to really get momentum in the convenience channel. And we do service club customers, the Costco, Sam's Club, BJ's of the world. But that's a huge growth opportunity for us. So you can look at just channel expansion, and then you can look beyond that and say, what about food service, right? So lots of opportunity in food service that we haven't even scratched the surface on today. And that's not even mentioning what we have on the innovation pipeline. And that's where I would get in trouble, Greg, on what's beyond tea, lemonade, and everything. But a lot of opportunity and a lot of exciting stuff. But if you look, I always say, look left, look right in our set. You look left and you see all sorts of fruit drinks and different options there from, some of our competitors. You look right and you see iced coffee, and you see that channel, which is boomed. You can see logical next steps potentially, or rational next steps that we would kick the tires on. But really right now we're focused on executing our playbook. And I think companies get in trouble when they try to get too fixated on innovation and they lose that emphasis on execution of the core each and every day. So we're going to focus on the core while also balancing trial and testing and some cool shots at beyond core innovation.
Very cool. So tell me about in the area of operations. Do you have anything you're looking into now to sort of take the next level? When you're building new plants, it's so cool because you can kind of start out with the latest and greatest technology.
Yeah.
But there's always opportunities to upgrade,
Sure.
improve, and whatnot. Can you speak to any of the things you're doing operationally
Yeah.
in terms of investment areas?
Absolutely. And I think the takeaway for the audience that is probably listening to this is, we're talking about the growth side, the commercial side of the business, and wanting to innovate, add new flavors, pack sizes. And if you're an ops or supply chain person, you might just have heard complexity, right? Like that's what's being added, and that's true, right? Our operations and selling, behind me here, gallons of sweet tea. That's what our supply network had really been built to supply and to produce over the last many years. So now we're having to step back and say, okay, we're going from a SKU count of X, and by the end of this year, it's X, it's 2X. So we are doubling our SKU count. That's flavor and pack size mix, right? So what does that mean? Well, when you can't build inventory and you got to have fresh product, that means potentially you have like 2 times as many changeovers in a day, because we run almost every SKU each day or every other day in the summertime. So you're talking, well, that's more downtime. So, well, that's less capacity. That's increased cost per widget, right, per case. So we're really trying to solve for that. We're trying to solve for how do you maintain agility, maintain efficiency, maintain quality when your business gets more complex. So what that could mean, for instance, is a change in how we, look at processing. Do we think about technologies that will allow us to change over more quickly and have less downtime? And then obviously there's a technology component of that too, of what allows us to process and increase rates on our lines. So we have made investments like on-site bottle blowing at our Bessemer, Alabama facility last year, which was a great move for us, not just from a cost perspective, but also a sustainability and efficiency perspective. So it's allowed us to get bottles from right next door. We blow them on site. The quality is more consistent. We see better OEE gains as a result of it too, because it's fed in real time, and you have less backups, less downtime. So it's really end to end. But I'd say, and I'd urge all those working in a capacity like mine or in supply chain ops is be a student of your commercial business and of your products and of the consumer, because you have to understand where they're going in order to lead where we're going to go internally. So that's what we spend a lot of time focused on and trying to solve for.
Awesome. That's really great. I remember I was at GE and we were really pressed at the time to reduce, inventory turns and or increase turns rather, but reduce inventory, but increase the turns. And it only meant one thing: we had to change over more often, right? No more long milk runs on products, and the supervisors on the floor like, Greg, we're gonna lose out here because changeovers take so long. And I remember pointing the Six Sigma resources that I had at, let's figure out how to get into size as fast as possible. We were switching from one size glass tubing to another. And we really focused on doing that, and you become better at it because you're doing it more often and you just come up with the techniques to do it. So you brought me back there to, a problem that I had to solve for a long time ago when I was in manufacturing. So thanks for triggering me.
No, you know what? It's really funny. You go back to the simple things again of, okay, do we understand our process? Do we understand our standard work? Do we understand exactly how much time it's taking for a changeover? Are we watching it, observing it, and understand why it takes longer on line 1 than it does line 2? How can we reduce it? How are we sharing those ideas and those wins across all of our sites and communicating them, right? Like, there's just so much when you're in a high growth company, there's so much low hanging fruit. So the risk is a couple things: is being overwhelmed by the number of priorities or what you could go after. So sometimes just acknowledging that fruit is going to sit there for a little bit longer because we're picking other fruit that is the priority today. And then you mentioned it so well, and I love it around the simplification. So, honestly, what we do is not all that complex, right? So we make tea and lemonade, and doing it really well and doing consistently is hard, but it's more discipline than it is anything. It's discipline of how we do things. It's communication. It's working cross-functionally. It's collaboration. It's those things. And I think sometimes leaders and companies get in trouble because they complicate what they're trying to do, right? And I think simplification is, I think someone said it's the highest form of intelligence. I really believe that. Of like, can you take a complex operation, and sure, if you look end to end, it could be overwhelming if you walked off the street and saw it. But if you really break it down into each part and piece, and what function does each department have a responsibility to do? What do they have to do each and every day? And what does success look like? And you paint that picture and you get people working together. It's really not as challenging. Not to say it isn't hard to generate efficiencies and be excellent each and every day. And we have days that we're better than others. But you really have to simplify it as a leader to generate buy-in. People understand it, then they can move with speed and momentum.
Well, Chris, this has been great. I'm going to shift gears as we wrap up here, because I want to start introducing something into my podcast where, as I grow older, and I think as we all grow older in our careers, we got to remember gratitude. So I want to close out with maybe a moment of gratitude. And look, you've had a super successful career. You're right in the middle of a super interesting business, and it sounds like it's going very well for you. I'd like to see if there's anyone you'd like to acknowledge that helped you grow as a leader and as an operations and commercial leader, wherever it is, wherever they helped you grow. Is there anybody you'd like to call out here on the podcast?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that question. I was very, very fortunate to work for a lot of good leaders, and I do today. Tricia is definitely one that I put on that list. She is I always say she's all gas, no brakes. I mean, she's just full speed all the time. And we're, and she's a brutal facts, transparent leader of like, we just call it as it is. And she runs the business like it's an ops function. We have daily stand-up meetings for all of our functions. We flow updates. I've just never been around an end-to-end organization that communicates as well, collaborates as well, and deals with issues, stucks, brutal facts like it. And it's really energizing. When you're in ops, you're like, yeah, this is how I want to run a company end to end. And she leads in that way. So I'm appreciative of that and have really enjoyed working for her. And then as I think back earlier in my career, and I hate to, name one person and not name many, there's many I'm very appreciative of, but at Heinz, I worked under the leadership of Bob Ostranek. He was at Heinz. He was he was chief supply chain officer there, then at Keurig, and that was, how I made my way there. And then he was on the board when I was in the private equity world. He's always just been a fine leader, honest, high character, holds people accountable, leads in the right way. And I've always kind of stuck with me about how he operated. So I've tried to emulate that over time, and tried to live up to that type of standard. And, again, just across the board, lots of great leaders. And I heard early on in my career you're going to watch certain leaders and imagine you have this imaginary toolbox and there are certain experience and tools that these leaders use that you're going to want to put in the toolbox, and others you're going to want to leave and never put in the toolbox.
Yes.
And I've tried to embrace that of every time I've worked for a leader, whether I have some perspective of what they do really well, or maybe an area of opportunity like we all have, just what tools am I going to pull from them? And I don't think I've ever worked for a leader that I haven't seen something that they do that's, they're best in class with, right? Or their competitive advantage. So that's the mindset I've tried to embrace.
Right. And people are watching you, Chris, now. There's people on your team and that interact with you, and I'm sure you're setting a good example for them. I think as leaders, we have an obligation, I always say, to pay it forward, right? Absolutely. Somebody looked out for us. We should look out for them, for other people, who are up and coming.
Yeah.
Help them reach their potential.
Yeah. You know what? We have formalized at Milo's, we have a formalized mentorship program for our leadership and executive team to mentor others in the business. So you get paired with someone and you'll mentor them for a year. And I feel like that is exactly for the leaders listening to this. So like, if you're not doing that, do that. And whether it's a formal program or, you offer your time and your experiences to someone, it's invaluable. And I think now also with the challenges of not always being in an office and having a physical location where you might bump into people. Like, I met Bob not because he was my direct boss. I mean, he was my boss's boss's boss, whatever, when I was 22 years old at Heinz. But my cube happened to be outside of his office, right? So, like, that's how I met him. That just doesn't happen as often or in today's environment. So I think you have to be more intentional about it. And I urge us all to take our time and think about volunteering. It's not just external, but it's how do you volunteer internal, your time and your treasures. So
that's a great way to wrap things up. I want to tell you how much I appreciate you joining us for this podcast and sharing the wisdom and the story of Milo's. I think it's a fantastic story. I'm going to tell all our listeners, if you haven't tried Milo's, the tea, the lemonade, give it a try. Hold me accountable. It's an outstanding product. It's been a great conversation today. I wish you all the best as you continue on this juggernaut of growth there. And I really appreciate you taking some time to tell the story to our listeners.
Well, thank you for having me, Greg. I appreciate it. Appreciate Tenzing putting this together. You all are best in class, so I can say that from experience. But thank you for doing this, and thanks for the opportunity to share the Milo story. It's one that I feel very strongly about.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you, Chris, and have a great day. Till next time.